I'm Dr. Lawrence Brock, and I'll tell about my near-death experience and other remarkable spiritual encounters since then. It's been a while since my 1976 near-death experience at 22. I'm almost 70 now. The fact that I had never heard of a near-death experience and didn't even consider it contributed to my encounter. I only saw science fiction elements. I lived in Longmont, Colorado, and my parents in Rye Brook, New York, where I grew up. We went to high school together in Rye Brook and decided to visit our parents in the East. He had a fantastic Datsun 280Z, but we went straight through for 1,800 miles. He dropped me off at my parents' place, where we napped. I forget how we learned about the party. You must remember this was before cell phones, email, and everything else. Through conversation, one of us learned that a high school acquaintance was holding a party. I drove my mom's small Ford Bobcat to the party, and he drove his stylish Datsun 280Z. We were smoking pot and drinking, but I didn't believe I was too high, and people weren't as concerned about drinking and driving. There was loud music, dancing, and you had to yell to talk to anyone in the packed house. I recall leaving through the crowd. Not sure I left the door. I remember glimpses of walking down the walkway to the street. Then I was floating above my broken automobile in the white light. My body and head. A scar shows it was cracked open. My legs were straight as I leaned against a tree. I saw a police officer bending over me. Because I identified as my soul, I didn't see my body as myself. Me floating in the white light, I looked down at my body. I was surrounded by white light. Behind me, a large circle of white light included a full-length man's silhouette. The light from that man was mostly white with a hint of yellowish gold. My major recall was feeling, not words or knowledge. It seemed more like the greatest love and acceptance, and that everything was okay. Life was okay, my head was shattered, my car smashed, and I was okay. The world was fine. Not like this whoopee-doo celebration. More like everything was serene and beautiful. Again, it's hard to define because there was knowing yet no need to know. Not like there were questions. Everything was fine with my life images. I didn't glance down, but I felt like I had a body. I thought it was great weather. I prefer warm temperature, thus it was wonderful summer day. Sometimes the outdoors is so gorgeous you feel it on your body. I don't know the duration. It seemed short. Short story when I tell it. It felt longer, but not like in near-death experiences, where it seems like years. Not like that either. The voice behind me said, "You have to go back. Your father wants you to stay." I realized the father was God. People sometimes question, did you have a choice? I didn't even think of it in the spirit of everything being okay. The voice urged, go back in, so I did and woke up 3 days later in the hospital. I nearly came to in the hospital, and I still have images of blurry people in white jackets, like physicians or nurses. I woke. When I could stand, I was going to leave the hospital when my parents came in. We were gathered in a circle, my parents, the neurologist, and me conversing. I just remember the neurologist coming close to me as he left and whispering, "You're lucky." He had a smirk on his face like he had done a terrific job, which he did because my head was busted open. Nearby, a nurse on the other side of the bed replied, "Yeah, it was touch and go." I don't know if I flatlined. We never got that information. I had a Polaroid photo of the car, but I didn't keep track of it because it didn't seem important. I knew. I sensed something shifted in me but didn't know how to process it. Although I was always intuitive, my intuition increased. I noticed straight immediately that when I touched someone, my hands would warm up quickly. How I came to realize this, and I don't remember when I first heard near-death experience, but it was years later. Sometimes I helped folks heal without knowing it, you know. I didn't think, oh, I have healing powers. I just stumbled into it. In addition to my intuition and the heat in my palms, I started meeting a lot of spiritual people who knew about and experienced near-death experiences. I returned to Colorado and lived there after getting healed. I was a second chef in a restaurant and liked cooking, but it wasn't as fulfilling as I expected. I considered returning to school. I graduated from undergrad and, My parents purchased me a new Jeep CJ5 to get me to go east. In those days, few New Yorkers had Jeeps, although few in Colorado did, and she bribed me to come back east, live in Westchester County and work in my dad's electrical contracting firm. Someone knocked on the door of my Tarrytown, New York, apartment while I was doing that. Since there were no cell phones, no one texted me or let me know they were coming. People just showed up. The beautiful woman at the door said, "I'm the sister of a friend of yours from Colorado." I had mentioned my experience to that person, but without using the word near-death experience. She said, "My sister told me some really interesting things about you, and I want to introduce you to this man who teaches about what happens after we die." I didn't act or reach out. Again, I almost denied my spiritual experience because, well, you've got to have a job and make money and stuff like that. She introduced me to a Sufi sheikh, a mystical sect of Islam with several branches. Thus, he was a Mevlevi dervish who followed Jalal ad-Din Rumi. Rumi, the poet whose spiritual and love poems are popular, composed them about his love for God and his master, Shamsi Tabrizi. I studied with that sheikh for 10 years. I had many fantastic adventures. Some of his actions, a few years after meeting him, something amazing happened. I visited him in Boulder, Colorado, Vancouver, Canada, Texas, and the Panhandle. No idea what town it was near, but there was a huge ranch, some in NYC. He taught this seminar at Manhattan St. Patrick's Cathedral. I asked if I could be in the holy geometry class, and he said, "You're not going to understand it," which was true because the other students had studied for a while. But he responded, "You could hang around me and help me out." So I carried his briefcase, swept the floor, and organized the chairs. Menial duties spiritual gurus sometimes let people do to be around them. On a break, he said, "Come into my office." He didn't have an office and was usually joking. I never knew whether he was serious. He told me, "Come into my office," and he said, "Here, give me your hands." He took both and put my hands together like this. Then he put my hand within his hands like this and said, "There, you got it." I asked, "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer me, and then he said, "No, give me your hands again." I've been thinking more about writing a book about my life. I observed that he taught me a lot about healing without hands-on healing. I learned about spirituality, and when I studied hands-on healing, I understood it. I'm very tactile, so healing felt like my near-death experience. That's when I understood. So I saw this teacher several times. He was an Islamic teacher. I was born in a Jewish family, and he started talking to me about Mary, Mother Mary, and ultimately Jesus. He said Mary was just so open to the Christ energy that she let that in, and that's how she became Jesus's mother, because she was so dedicated and open to God. I knew that feeling from my near-death experience. When he started talking to me about Jesus, it was like, and that being behind me was Jesus. And I knew that, and even now, when I talk about it, I have this energy that I've learned to utilize to heal people. Not knowing what occurred to me has been a terrific experience, and I'm constantly curious about spiritual phenomena. In addition to that direct communication of healing energy from the instructor, I had several other cool encounters with him, other spiritual teachers, and my healing work. I've been ignorant about many things, but I see the good in people, and I know everyone's good and presume they're unfolding into their goodness like me. Not everyone is. I wasn't aware of what was going in my hands when one of my buddies twisted his ankle near me. I instinctively put my hands on it without thinking, and he felt the warmth, saying, "Whoa, that made it feel better. Okay." So again, not understanding and still asking, what's going on here? And learning a little bit here and there. I also spent time with my neighbor next to my childhood home. I was talking to the father, and he claimed his grandfather was very sick and would die shortly. I told him I'd pray for him again, almost unconsciously. I went to pray for him and felt something again, not knowing what to think. The next time I visited the father, he said, "I think something happened when you prayed because, right pretty soon after I talked to you, it was almost like he had this phenomenal recovery, and he ended up living for some months longer." When I started chatting to the Sufi sheikh, he called me sensitive. In his book, his teacher called him sensitive, so I realized that was a compliment because I was attuned to spiritual matters. I work hard and take this seriously. I study with people I meet, read books, Meditate daily, do Tai Chi, yoga, and journal writing, and I encourage it to everyone. I often see people who are disturbed over emotional issues and assist them calm down. I've learned to hold this light energy, that loving feeling from my near-death experience around people. I talk to them for two reasons: to get their thoughts aligned with opening up to the goodness inside and outside of them, which brings the healing light in and makes them feel better. Most individuals say, "Wow, I feel so light and happier" after the session. I encourage anyone with gifts to explore them. Anyone can have a spiritual gift, whether it's electrical work, construction, painting, cleaning, or being a parent, which is the most spiritual thing there is. I strongly encourage folks to follow their spiritual dreams, meditate, and journal. I cannot say that enough times. You needn't meditate perfectly. I've meditated for 50 years, and some days are bad. It's my thinking. I got to look at my phone. I got, all this stuff. But having time to focus on yourself, your truth, and God is crucial. It's nice here. Much obliged.